"Mommy, why doesn't Daddy love you anymore?" her 5-year-old asked. The Korean billionaire next door heard her sob all night and changed everything. The night Amanda's daughter asked the question that broke everything open, the bathwater had gone cold. Maya had been sitting in it for 20 minutes, not playing, not splashing, not doing any of the things 5-year-olds did in bathtubs. Just sitting. Her small knees pulled to her chest, her chin resting on top of them, her eyes fixed on the faucet with the particular stillness of a child thinking about something too large for her body to contain. Amanda had been kneeling on the bath mat, cup in hand, about to rinse Maya's hair, when she noticed. "Bug? You okay?" Maya didn't answer right away. She kept looking at the faucet. Then she turned and looked at her mother with those enormous brown eyes, and asked, in the careful, quiet voice of a child who had been working up to something for a very long time, "Mommy, why doesn't Daddy love you anymore?" The cup slipped in Amanda's hand. She caught it, just barely, and she knelt there on the cold bath mat in their small bathroom in their small apartment on the north side of Chicago. And she looked at her 5-year-old daughter sitting in cold bathwater asking a question that no mother is ever ready for, and she felt the entire floor of herself give way. "Baby. He used to hug you," Maya said, still that same quiet, factual voice, like she was reading from notes she'd taken. "When he came home he used to hug you first, before he even put his bag down. I remember." She paused. "He doesn't hug you anymore. He doesn't even look at you anymore. When he comes to get me he looks at his phone." Amanda opened her mouth. Nothing came out. "Did you do something wrong?" Maya asked. Not meanly, genuinely, searching her mother's face for the answer to a math problem that wouldn't resolve. "Because if you did something wrong you could say sorry. Sorry works. Miss Rivera says sorry always works if you mean it." Amanda set the cup down on the edge of the tub. She reached into the cold water and pulled the drain plug and wrapped Maya in a towel that was still warm from the dryer, and she held her daughter against her chest and she said, into Maya's damp hair, with every ounce of steadiness she had left in her body, "You didn't do anything wrong. And neither did Mommy. Sometimes things just change, baby. That's all." Maya was quiet inside the towel. Then, muffled against Amanda's shoulder, "I don't like when things change. I know, Bug. It makes my tummy hurt." Amanda closed her eyes. "I know," she whispered. "Mine too." She got Maya into pajamas. She read the books. She did the water and the nightlight and the closet door open exactly 6 inches in the song. Twice because Maya asked for it twice, and she kissed her daughter's forehead and she said "I love you" to the moon, and every star passed it the way she said it every single night, and Maya said "I love you more, Mommy" the way she did every single night. And then Amanda walked out of that room and down the short hallway and into her own bedroom, and she sat on the edge of the bed and she pressed both hands over her face. And the sound that came out of her was the sound of a woman who had been holding a collapsing building up with her bare hands for 11 months and had just run out of strength. It wasn't quiet this time. She pushed her face into the pillow to muffle it, her shoulders shaking, her whole body giving in to the weight of everything she'd been carrying since the night Jerome sat across from her at their kitchen table and said "I don't want this anymore," like their marriage was a subscription he was canceling. Like their daughter in the next room was a complication he hadn't anticipated. Like 11 years of Amanda's life had simply expired. She cried until she couldn't. And then she lay there in the dark, breathless, hollowed out, listening to the city outside and the heat moving through the building's old pipes. And through the wall beside her bed, the thin shared wall of the townhouse they rented in Lincoln Park, she heard nothing. She didn't know yet that, on the other side of that wall, a man had gone completely still. That he had been sitting at his desk in the dark and had heard every second of what she tried to keep silent. That he had pressed one hand flat against the plaster and closed his eyes. That he had stayed like that for a very long time. Here is what Amanda Collins's life looked like from the outside 11 months after her husband left. Functional. Competent. Fine. She got up at 5:15 every morning because her shift at Northwestern Memorial's pediatric unit started at 7 and the daycare didn't open until 6:30, and there was exactly 45 minutes of logistics between those two facts that required military precision. She packed Maya's lunch the night before. She meal prepped on Sundays when she had Sundays. She kept the apartment clean not because she had the energy for it, but because chaos made Maya anxious, and Maya's anxiety was the one thing Amanda could not afford. She was a good nurse. She knew this not from arrogance but from the simple evidence of 11 years doing it. The way she could read a child's pain level from the set of their jaw before they'd said a word. The way frightened parents calmed down when she walked into the room. The way her hands were steady even when everything else wasn't. She was 31 years old. She had $3,400 in savings, $47,000 in student loans on an income-based repayment plan, and a divorce decree that had been filed on a Tuesday in March with the same emotional ceremony as a utility bill. She had a daughter who was funny and fierce and so perceptive it sometimes frightened her. She had a sister in Atlanta who called twice a week and said you need to start dating again in the tone of someone prescribing medication. She had friends from nursing school who texted regularly and meant to visit and hadn't yet. And she had the particular, specific loneliness of a woman who had gone from being someone's partner to being completely, structurally alone. Responsible for every decision, every bill, every nightmare, every school form, every fever at 2 o'clock in the morning, and who had gotten so good at handling all of it alone that most people had stopped thinking to ask if she was okay. Jerome had moved in with Priya 3 months after he left. Amanda had found out the way she found out most things about Jerome's new life. Accidentally. Through the collateral damage of social media. A mutual friend's tagged photo at a housewarming, Jerome's arm around a woman's shoulders in a bright kitchen with exposed brick and pendant lighting. She'd stared at it on her phone for 4 minutes, while sitting in the hospital parking garage before her shift. Then she'd put the phone in her bag and gone to work and placed 2 IVs and comforted one screaming toddler and eaten half a granola bar over a patient chart and not thought about the photo again until she was lying in bed that night and it came back like a wave she hadn't seen coming. The apartment Jerome had moved into was in Wicker Park. Nicer than where Amanda lived. Bigger. The kind of place that photographed well on a housewarming post. Amanda had looked up the rent once, at midnight, when she was feeling particularly masochistic. She had closed the tab and gone to check on Maya. Maya had started asking questions about Jerome in September. Not angry questions. That would have been easier in some ways. These were worse. They were the careful, investigative questions of a child who was genuinely trying to understand a situation that the adults around her were only half explaining. Why does Daddy live far away? Why can't he come on Tuesday? Tuesdays aren't busy. Does Daddy know I'm in kindergarten now? Did you tell him? Mommy, does Daddy have a new little girl? That last one had come out of nowhere on a Wednesday evening while Amanda was making pasta and Maya was sitting at the kitchen table drawing with her crayons. Amanda had turned from the stove very slowly and said, very carefully, "What made you think of that, Bug?" "Sophia at school has 2 daddies," Maya had said, not looking up from her drawing. "And Jalen's daddy has a new baby. So I was wondering if Daddy was going to get a new little girl and if she would be my sister or not my sister." Amanda had turned back to the pasta. She had stood at the stove and stirred it for a long time without saying anything, choosing her words with the care of someone defusing something. "Daddy doesn't have a new little girl," she'd said finally. "But if he did," Maya had pressed, "would she be my sister? Half-sister, maybe?" Maya had processed this. "I don't want a half-sister," she'd said quietly. "I want a whole sister. Can we get a dog instead?" Amanda had laughed, sudden and real, and it had startled her, the way it came from somewhere genuine in the middle of the wait. "Maybe someday," she'd said. "Okay." Maya had agreed and gone back to her drawing. Jerome's visitation was every other weekend, Friday evening to Sunday afternoon. He had canceled 4 times since June. Not consecutively. That would have been easier to address, a pattern to point to. He'd canceled in June, then honored 2 visits, then canceled in August, honored 1, canceled in September. Each cancellation came with an explanation: work, a trip with Priya, a family commitment, something that always sounded reasonable in isolation and was becoming, in accumulation, a portrait of a father choosing his new life over his daughter with the gradual consistency of erosion. Maya had a system for the weekends Jerome was supposed to come. Amanda had discovered it on a Tuesday night in October, for days before Jerome was scheduled to pick Maya up for the weekend. She'd been looking for Maya's library book in her backpack. The turtle one, brown with a shell that Maya had named Gerald, and she'd found, in the front pocket, a folded piece of paper. She'd opened it. In Maya's careful kindergarten print, in purple crayon, with letters that were still working out their sizing. Things to show Daddy. 1. My turtle backpack, Gerald. 2. My new shoes, the ones with the star. 3. My picture of our house I made at school. 4. My tooth that is wiggly, almost out. 5. My dance I learned. Amanda had stood in the kitchen with that piece of paper in her hands. She'd looked at the list for a long time. Then she'd noticed the other paper underneath it, older, more crumpled, the creases deep from being folded and unfolded many times. She'd opened it carefully. Same purple crayon. Different list from earlier in the fall. Things to show Daddy. 1. My first day of school picture. 2. The rock I found that looks like a heart. 3. Gerald the backpack. 4. My new lunchbox. Everything on this older list had a small careful checkmark next to it. Except number 1. The school picture. There was no checkmark there. Just the words, and then beside them, in the same purple crayon, in slightly wobbly letters that suggested they'd been written while trying very hard to write neatly. Next time. Amanda had sat down on the kitchen floor. Not because her legs gave out. Deliberately. She'd lowered herself down and put her back against the cabinet and looked at that paper and felt something crack open in her chest that was quieter and deeper and more permanent than crying. Her daughter had been keeping lists. Had been preparing each time to show her father the pieces of her life he'd missed. Had been carrying those lists in her backpack to be ready, to not waste a single moment when he came, to fit everything in. And when he didn't come, she'd kept the list. Added next time and put it in her pocket and started a new one. Amanda sat on that kitchen floor for a long time. She did not cry because she was all cried out and because some things were too precisely, cleanly terrible to cry about. They just sat in you. You just had to learn the shape of them and carry them forward. She put both lists back in Gerald's front pocket and zipped it closed. She made dinner. Jerome canceled that Friday. Work thing, he said. We'll do next weekend. Amanda had been the one to tell Maya. She had watched her daughter's face go through something that no 5-year-old's face should have to go through. The bright anticipation, the flicker of confusion, the brief desperate search for an expression to land on before settling into a careful, practiced neutrality that broke Amanda's heart completely because it was so clearly learned. Maya had learned to not let the disappointment show. She was 5 years old and she had already learned to protect other people from her feelings. Okay, Maya had said. Then she'd gone to Gerald and gotten the list out and unfolded it and looked at it for a moment and then folded it back up very neatly and put it in the front pocket. I'll save it, she said. For next time. Break CO had been in Chicago for 6 weeks when Amanda's life fell through the floor. He had not meant to be in Chicago at all, in the sense that he had not meant to be in any of the 14 cities he'd cycled through in 3 years. He went where the work was. The work went where his family's company needed him. CO Group's acquisition of a North American logistics firm required his direct oversight for 3 to 4 months. His assistant had arranged the Lincoln Park townhouse because he refused hotels for long stays, and that was the full extent of Brake's relationship to the city. He was not interested in Chicago. He was not, to be specific, interested in much of anything. People who met Brake CO in professional settings described him as formidably intelligent, precisely decisive, and somewhat difficult to read. They were not wrong. He had a stillness about him that some people found reassuring and others found unsettling, the kind of complete self-containment that came not from coldness but from having learned, at considerable cost, to keep everything essential very deep inside. Ji-Yun had been able to get to those depths in under 4 minutes. She had been, as Brake had once tried to explain to her and completely failed, the loudest, most relentlessly alive person he had ever encountered. She laughed at a volume that made restaurant patrons turn around. She had an opinion about everything and delivered each opinion with the confidence of someone who had already won the argument in her head. She made friends on public transportation. She remembered the names of every service worker she'd ever encountered. She had been a child psychologist who took her work home in the best possible way, which meant that she saw the inner life of every person she met with a clarity and compassion that was sometimes overwhelming to be on the receiving end of. She had seen Brake completely from the second month of their relationship and had never once been frightened by what she found. He had loved her with the entirety of himself, quietly and completely, the way he did everything. She died on a Thursday in November, 3 years ago, in a collision on the highway outside Seoul. For months pregnant. On her way home from a conference where she'd presented a paper on childhood trauma responses to parental separation. Brake had gotten the call at his office. He had driven to the hospital. He had sat in a waiting room chair for 2 hours and 20 minutes. And then a doctor had come out and Brake had understood from the doctor's face before a single word was spoken. He had not been back to their apartment after that. His brother had packed it. His mother had handled the arrangements. Brake had gone through the following weeks with the mechanical precision of a man who had identified survival as the only available objective and was executing it without sentiment. 3 years later, he was still executing it. He slept poorly. He worked excessively. He moved between cities without putting anything down, without acquiring anything that would require packing when the next assignment came. The Lincoln Park townhouse had nothing on its walls. The closet contained suits and work shirts, arranged by color. The kitchen had a coffee machine and a kettle and 2 cups. 2 cups. He'd noticed that the first morning. He'd unpacked and there had been 2 cups from the set his assistant had stocked the kitchen with, and he'd put one in the back of the cabinet and used only the one in the front and hadn't examined why. He'd become aware of Amanda and Maya within the first week. Not intrusively. Just the building sounds, which he cataloged automatically the way he cataloged everything. The small feet on the floor above, no, not above, the building was 2 stories and he was on the 2nd floor same as them. It was the running in the hallway, the elevator, the sounds of a child existing fully and fearlessly in the world. The woman's voice, always patient, always a degree or 2 past tired, with the specific warmth of someone giving the best they had left after a long day. The rhythms, early mornings, late returns, the particular domestic music of one person running a household that was designed for 2. He'd seen her twice before the elevator. 3rd morning, she'd been leaving as he was arriving home from an early site visit. She'd had a coffee thermos in one hand and a child's lunchbox in the other, and had been walking fast enough that she almost walked into him before she'd looked up. She'd said sorry and he'd said it's fine, and they'd passed each other, and he'd noticed, in the way he noticed things, that she'd looked exhausted in the specific way of someone who was trying to hide it. 6th morning, he'd seen her sitting in her parked car in front of the building for almost 10 minutes before going in. Engine off. Not on her phone. Just sitting. He'd watched from the window without meaning to watch, and he'd recognized it. That specific human stillness of someone who needed a few minutes between the world and their front door. He hadn't spoken to her. He hadn't intended to. Then Maya had happened. Maya had introduced herself on a Saturday morning with the complete social confidence of someone who had simply never considered that a stranger might not want to meet her. Brake had been in the elevator going out for his morning walk, and the doors had opened on 2, and there had been a woman and a child and a canvas bag and a backpack shaped like a turtle. The woman had the look of someone bracing for a quiet elevator ride. The child had looked up at him with enormous eyes and said hi with the directness of a declaration. He'd said hi back. The child had told him her name, her mother's existence, a theory about neighbor strangers being different from regular strangers, their grocery plans, and the fact that her father was supposed to come that day but had gotten busy, all within approximately 90 seconds. That last one had landed quietly in Brake's chest. He hadn't shown it. He'd said you as well to the mother's goodbye and gone outside and walked farther than he'd intended and come back 45 minutes later having thought about the child's face more than made any sense. It was 3 weeks after that when he heard Amanda crying through the wall. Not the first time she'd cried. He'd heard fragments before, the kind of brief controlled release that someone allowed themselves late at night when they thought the building was asleep. But this time was different. This time it had come after something he'd heard clearly. The bath going cold. The child's voice asking the question in the careful, deliberate tones of someone who had been waiting to ask it. The specific quality of a child saying something devastating without knowing it was devastating. Why doesn't Daddy love you anymore? Brake had gone completely still at his desk. He'd heard every word. He wasn't trying to. The walls were genuinely thin, and the question had been spoken in the particular register that carries through plaster and old building insulation without effort. He'd heard the mother's voice, carefully steady. He'd heard the child say, "It makes my tummy hurt." He'd heard the bedtime, the books, the song twice, and then the quiet. And then not quiet. Then the sound of Amanda on the other side of the wall, a sound he recognized in his body before his mind caught up. The sound of a person who had held themselves together for a very long time and had run out of the thing that was holding them. Brake had put his pen down. He'd pressed his hand flat against the wall. He'd stayed like that for a long time, his forehead lowered, his eyes closed, listening to a woman grieve through plaster and wondering what on earth he was supposed to do with the feeling moving through him that felt dangerously close to something he'd buried under 3 years of airports and acquisition documents. He'd done nothing that night. He'd been awake until 4 in the morning. He'd written a note in the morning. She'd been standing at his door before he finished writing it. He'd opened the door to find her in scrubs, hair up, eyes that had clearly spent the night doing something other than sleeping, holding herself with the dignity of a woman who was not going to acknowledge that he'd heard anything. "I'm sorry if she started. "Don't apologize," he said. She looked at him. "You don't have to apologize for any sound you make in your own home," he said. Her jaw moved slightly. She was holding something in. "I have coffee," he said. "If you have time." She had 12 minutes before she needed to leave for her shift. She came in. She sat at his kitchen table and wrapped both hands around the cup he put in front of her, and she looked out the window at the gray October morning, and she didn't say anything for a minute, and he didn't make her. Then, "She's been keeping lists." He looked at her. "In her backpack. Lists of things to show her father when he visits. And when he cancels." Her voice broke slightly, recovered. "When he cancels, she just writes next time on the paper and starts a new list." Brake said nothing. "She is 5 years old," Amanda said, quietly and with a precise, restrained fury that was somehow more devastating than shouting would have been. "She is 5 years old, and she has taught herself to reorganize her disappointment. To just absorb it, pack it away, start over. She is 5, and she already knows to protect people from how she feels." She pressed her lips together. "I keep thinking, what am I teaching her? That this is just what you do? That the people who are supposed to show up just don't? And you fold it up and put it in your pocket." "You're not teaching her that," Brake said. "How do you know?" "Because she's still making the lists." He said it quietly. If she had learned to stop expecting, she would stop preparing. She still prepares. That's not resignation. That's faith. And the only reason she still has it is because someone has shown her consistently that people can be counted on. He paused. "That's you." Amanda looked at him across the table. He could see the effort it was taking her not to come apart again. The enormous, exhausting effort. "I heard her question," he said. "Last night. I wasn't trying to." She looked down at her cup. "It was a very precise question," he said. "She didn't ask why her father left. She asked why he doesn't love her mother. There's a distinction." "I know," Amanda said, barely audible. "She's not confused about her own value," Brake said. "She's confused about his. That's a critical difference." Amanda looked up at him. "How do you know these things?" she said. "My wife," he said. "She was a child psychologist." He watched Amanda hear the tense. "She died 3 years ago," he said. "Car accident." He paused. "She was pregnant." The kitchen was absolutely silent. "Brake," Amanda said softly. "It's all right." "It's not." He looked at her. She looked at him. Two people on opposite sides of grief, both fluent in the language of it, recognizing each other. "No," he said after a moment. "It's not." Jerome Collins called on a Tuesday in November, and what he said changed the shape of everything. Amanda was in the break room at work, eating a yogurt she didn't want because she'd forgotten to eat breakfast, and it was now 1 o'clock in the afternoon. She'd had a hard morning. A 9-year-old with leukemia who'd been declining for 3 weeks. A family at the end of their hope. The particular brand of helplessness that came with doing everything correctly and watching it not be enough. She saw Jerome's name on her screen and answered because she always answered. "For Maya." "I talked to my lawyer," Jerome said. "No hello." Still no hello 7 months post-divorce. "Okay," Amanda said carefully. "We think the current arrangement isn't working." His lawyer, presumably, possibly Priya. The word landed like a small stone. "In what way?" Amanda said, in the voice she used with distressed parents. Measured, inviting, giving no indication of what was behind it. "Maya needs more consistency. More time with me. My lawyer thinks we can make a case for primary custody shifting." Amanda set the yogurt down. "Jerome. At least partial. We're not talking about taking her from you. Amanda, we're talking about a more balanced." "Jerome." Her voice was quiet and absolutely flat. "You have canceled 4 visits since June. You call her once a week if something doesn't come up. You missed her first day of kindergarten. You have not attended a single school event." She paused. "You want to talk to me about consistency? That's exactly why we need to restructure. I want to be more present. Then be more present. Show up. Be there when you say you'll be there. You don't need a lawyer for that. You need to decide your daughter matters more than whatever else comes up. Pause. My lawyer will be in touch, Jerome said. I'd recommend you get representation. The call ended. Amanda sat in the break room for 4 minutes without moving. Then she went back to work because there was a child on her unit who needed her, and her own falling apart would have to wait until later, the way it always did, the way it always had. She told Brake that evening. She didn't plan to. She'd been going to handle it alone, research lawyers, figure out the finances, do the thing she always did, which was absorb the blow and keep moving. But Maya was in bed, and the custody letter his lawyer had emailed was on her screen, and it was 9:30 at night, and she was sitting at her kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea, looking at language like primary residential parent and best interests of the minor child and petitioner's significantly increased availability. Jerome's new flexible work-from-home schedule, which Priya's company offered, conveniently, and she felt the specific terror of the ground moving under her. She knocked on his door. He read the email she showed him on her phone. His face didn't change, but his jaw did. A single degree of tightening. He waited until he had legal language, Brake said, with the precision of someone who understood exactly what was happening. He knows you'll respond reasonably. He knows you won't escalate. He's counting on your reasonableness as a strategy. I can't afford. I know a lawyer, Brake said. The best family attorney in this city. I'll call her tonight. I can't let you. Amanda. He said her name in a way that stopped the sentence. Not forceful. Just certain. He is trying to take your daughter from you by exploiting the fact that you are alone and overstretched, and he has more resources right now. I will not watch that happen. He looked at her steadily. Let me help. She stared at him. Why? She said. Not defensively. Genuinely. Why? He was quiet for a long moment. Because I have spent 3 years doing nothing that mattered, he said. Closing deals and catching flights and filling time. And I am so tired of it. He looked at her with something completely unguarded. The stillness cracked open just enough. And because your daughter put my name on her list. Amanda froze. What list? She showed me yesterday, he said. In the elevator. She said she made a new one. He paused. At the top it says people who make me happy. She showed it to me and asked if she'd spelled my name right. Amanda's hand came up over her mouth. She drew stars next to it, Brake said quietly. She counted them to me. 12. The sound Amanda made was not a sob and not a laugh, and was entirely both. It came from somewhere she hadn't been able to reach in a long time. Something warm and broken and real simultaneously. Brake crossed to her and put both hands on her shoulders, and she put her forehead against his chest, and he held her with the careful steadiness of someone who understood exactly what she needed, which was not to be fixed or reassured or instructed, just held, just accompanied in the specific darkness of the moment, just not alone. She is going to be fine, he said into her hair, because she is entirely, completely, unmistakably yours. 3 days before the custody hearing, Jerome came to the apartment unannounced. Amanda opened the door and found him on the landing in his good coat, the one he wore when he wanted to make an impression, and behind him, slightly to the left, Priya. Younger than Amanda always imagined, somehow, though she'd seen the photos, and beautiful and looking very much like she wished she were somewhere else. Maya was in the kitchen doing homework. We need to talk, Jerome said, face to face, before the hearing. Jerome. 5 minutes. Please. Amanda stepped into the hallway and pulled the door almost closed behind her. Jerome looked good, well rested. There was something quietly infuriating about that, the way he'd clearly been thriving in the months that had cost Amanda everything. He looked like a man whose life had simplified and improved. He looked like a man for whom the divorce had worked out. I want to resolve this without the court, he said. Then withdraw the petition. Amanda, you want to take my daughter, she said. Quietly so Maya wouldn't hear. You want to take her from the home she's been in, from the school she's settled into, from the routine I have spent 11 months building alone because you left, Jerome. I left the marriage. You left her, Amanda said, and her voice cracked on it. And she didn't let it crack further. She pulled it back with everything she had. Every time you canceled, Every time something came up, she has a list, Jerome. Did you know that? She keeps a list of things to show you. She's been carrying it in her backpack since September. And every time you don't come she writes next time and she puts it away and she starts over. She looked at him. She does that because she learned somewhere that the people you love sometimes don't show up. But you keep the list anyway. She learned that. At 5. Jerome looked away. Priya's eyes were wet. Amanda noticed. She filed that away. I'm not a bad father, Jerome said. I know that. I want to do better. Then do better, Amanda said. Come on Saturday. Come because you said you would. Don't make her pack a list, Jerome. Just come. Her voice was steady now, past the cracking, into something harder and clearer. I don't need a court. I don't need a lawyer. I need you to show up for her. That's all she needs. Jerome stood there. He looked at the door behind her. Is she? He started. She's doing homework, Amanda said. You can go in if you want. A long pause. Jerome looked at Priya. Something passed between them. He looked at Amanda. I'll withdraw the petition, he said. And I'll be there Saturday. Amanda held his gaze. Don't tell her, she said. Don't say you're coming unless you're sure. Because she will get the list out and she'll be ready and if you don't come. She stopped. Don't tell her unless you're certain. I'll be there, he said. He arrived at 10 on Saturday, exactly when he said he would. Maya heard the knock and looked up from her cereal with an expression Amanda would carry inside her for the rest of her life. The complicated, careful hope of a child who had learned to manage her own expectations and was choosing, in this moment, to let herself hope anyway. She got down from the stool. She went to Gerald the turtle backpack. She unzipped the front pocket and removed the folded piece of paper. The newest list, carefully prepared, creased and uncrumpled like something precious. She walked to the door. Jerome crouched when she opened it, and Maya stood in front of him with the list in one hand and her shoes with the star on the other foot and the bare ear headband and the gap in her teeth where the tooth had come out Thursday, and she looked at her father for one long moment. Then she held the list out to him with both hands. I saved them all, she said, so you could see everything. Amanda turned away. She stood at the kitchen window looking out at the November morning, her hand pressed over her mouth, tears running silently down her face because she had promised herself she wouldn't cry in front of Maya and she would keep that promise. She would, but God. She saved them all so you could see everything. And that was it, that was the whole thing, that was her daughter in 6 words. She heard Jerome's voice, low and thick. She heard Maya beginning to talk, the rapid, unstoppable narration of a child finally being listened to. And she stood at the window and breathed and let herself feel all of it. The relief and the grief and the love so enormous it had no edges. He knocked at 11:47 that night. Maya was asleep. Jerome had stayed for 3 hours, the longest visit since June, and he'd left with a promise for the following weekend that Amanda would believe when she saw it, but would not dismiss until she didn't. She'd put Maya to bed and Maya had said, tucked in with her nightlight glowing amber, Mommy, Daddy saw everything on the list. I know, Bug. He said my shoes are cool. They are. He said he was sorry he missed things. She paused, her small face serious. I told him it was okay. Is it okay? Amanda had sat on the edge of the bed for a long time before answering. It's okay to forgive someone, she said carefully, and still need them to do better. Both things can be true. Maya had thought about this. Like how I forgave Tyler for breaking my crayon, but I still don't let him borrow them? Exactly like that. Okay, Maya had said, satisfied, and closed her eyes. When Amanda opened the door to break at 11:47, he was holding 2 cups of coffee, and he looked at her and said, simply, You've been awake. So have you. I heard the visit, he said. Earlier. I wasn't trying to. He paused. She said she saved the lists. I heard it. Amanda leaned against the doorframe. Come in, she said. They sat at her kitchen table this time, his cups on her table, the city quiet outside, the building breathing around them. Tell me about Ji-yun, Amanda said. He looked at her. You've listened to everything about my life for weeks, she said. I want to know about yours. About her. A long pause. She was unbearable, he said, and the ghost of something on his face was so clearly love that Amanda's chest ached. In the best possible sense. She never let me disappear into work without coming to find me. She used to bring my dinner to my office and sit across from me and refuse to leave until I ate and talked to her. He turned the cup slowly. She would have been in your apartment within 48 hours of moving in. She would have known Maya's teacher's name, her best friend's name, your coffee order. He paused. She would have known exactly what to say when Maya asked that question. What do you think she would have said? Break was quiet for a long time. She would have told Maya that love doesn't stop. It changes shape. And sometimes the shape it changes into is hard to recognize. But it doesn't mean it's gone. He looked at his cup. And then she would have made sure Maya understood that the love she was most surrounded by, the love that had never changed shape, never canceled, never failed to show up, was right in front of her, looking at her every single day. Amanda's eyes filled. She sounds extraordinary, Amanda said. She was. He looked at her steadily, openly. You would have been her favorite person. Why? Because you love the way she did. Quietly, completely, without asking for it to be noticed. He held her gaze. She used to say that the loudest love was often the least reliable. That the love you could count on was the love that just kept showing up, without announcement, without requirement. He paused. That's you, Amanda. Every day. Every list Maya keeps. Every light left on. Every song sung twice. That's you loving her. And it's remarkable. And I think you have forgotten that it is remarkable, because you've been doing it alone and no one has been saying it back to you. The tears spilled. She didn't try to stop them. Break reached across the table and covered her hand with his. Not romantic. Not yet. Just present. Just the specific, irreplaceable act of one person choosing to be with another person in the most honest moment they had. I'm not the same person I was before Ji-Yun died, he said quietly. I want to be honest about that. I don't know how much of that person came back. But I know that since I moved in here I have felt. He paused, searching for the right word with the precision he brought to everything. Present. For the first time in 3 years, I have felt like I was somewhere instead of just passing through. Amanda looked at him. Maya did that, he said, with her bare ears and her complete absence of social fear. He paused. And you did it. With your 6 a.m. departures and your lists in your daughter's backpack that you didn't know she was keeping and your ability to hold a building up with your bare hands and still make dinner. Amanda laughed, wet and real. I am so tired, she admitted. I know. I am so incredibly tired and I am so grateful and I am terrified most of the time and Maya is the best thing I have ever done and some days just keeping her okay is everything I have. I know, he said again. And then you moved in next door, she said. And you left groceries at my door and you listened and you read her lists like they were legal documents and you... She stopped, steadied. You made me feel like someone saw me, not just the functioning version, the actual me. Break looked at her for a long moment. I see you, he said. I have been paying attention since the first morning. I see you completely. Outside, Chicago breathed in the dark. The lake wind pressed against the windows. Somewhere in the building a door closed softly. And at the kitchen table, 2 people who had each survived something unsurvivable looked at each other across 2 cups of coffee and the carefully dismantled walls between them and understood, without saying it yet, that something had already begun. Not despite the grief. Not despite the difficulty. Because of the honesty. Because of the showing up. Because of the lists. Because of the 12 stars. Maya lost her tooth on a Thursday morning and by Thursday afternoon she had told 3 teachers, 2 cafeteria workers, the crossing guard whose name was Mr. Eddy, and every child within a 12-foot radius. She had also, apparently, texted Break from Amanda's phone while Amanda was in the shower. Amanda found this out when she emerged from the bathroom to find a text thread that read, Maya, Mr. SEO, it's Maya, I lost my tooth. Maya, Mommy doesn't know I'm texting. Maya, please come see. Break. I'll be there at 6. Amanda stood in the bathroom doorway in her towel staring at the phone. He was there at 6. Maya opened the door and stood on her tiptoes and opened her mouth as wide as it would go and pointed to the gap with her entire arm in case he had somehow missed it. He crouched down and looked with full, genuine gravity. Significant, he said. I know. Maya agreed at a volume that suggested the whole building should share in this. She grabbed his hand and pulled him inside, and Amanda stood in the kitchen in her off-duty jeans and soft sweater and watched Brexio, who had crossed 14 cities without settling, crouch on her living room floor while her 5-year-old explained the Tooth Fairy's entire operational system and mythology with complete authority. He listened. He asked clarifying questions. He nodded at appropriate intervals. He looked up once and found Amanda watching, and something moved between them across the room. Warm and unguarded and terrifying and exactly right. Maya tugged his hand. "Will you stay for dinner?" she asked. "Mommy makes the good pasta on Thursdays." "Maya," Amanda started. "Yes," Brake said. He stayed for dinner. He stayed while Maya narrated the Tooth's entire day in chronological order. He stayed while Amanda made pasta and pretended she wasn't aware of him the way she was aware of him, which was entirely and constantly. He stayed while Maya had a bath and demanded he wait outside the door so she could yell the updates about how the Tooth Fairy worked to him through the wall, which he received with the patience of a man who had nowhere else to be. He stayed while Amanda put Maya to bed, and when she came back to the kitchen he was washing the dishes without having been asked, which was such a specific, devastating thing to witness that she stood in the doorway for a moment before he heard her and turned. "You don't have to." "I know," he said. She came and stood beside him and picked up a dish towel and dried while he washed, and they stood in her kitchen in the December quiet, and it was so simple and so enormous simultaneously that neither of them spoke for a few minutes. Then Maya's voice, from down the hall, sleepy and insistent. "Mommy, Mr. Co has to be here in the morning for when I find the money." Amanda pressed her lips together. Brake looked at her. "She means for the morning," Amanda said. "She wants both of us here when she checks under the pillow." He looked at her steadily, waiting, giving her every space to define what this meant and didn't mean without pressure, without assumption. "The couch is comfortable," Amanda said quietly. "If you want to stay." The smallest thing moved across his face, real and warm and entirely unperformed. "Okay," he said. In the morning, Maya came running out at 6:52 in her pajamas and bare ears, clutching a $5 bill from under her pillow that the Tooth Fairy had apparently left along with a note written in loopy handwriting that said, "Take care of that beautiful smile." She ran directly to both of them. Amanda in the kitchen, Brake on the couch, and held the $5 up in both hands like a trophy and announced, "She came. She came and she left $5 and a note." Brake sat up from the couch in yesterday's clothes, hair slightly disheveled for the first time Amanda had ever seen, and looked at the $5 with appropriate reverence. "Impressive," he said. "I know," Maya said. She climbed onto the couch beside him and showed him the note, and he read it seriously and nodded, and Maya leaned against his arm with the complete unconscious trust of a child who had decided something and was not reconsidering it. She looked across the room at Amanda. "Mommy," she said. "Can Mr. Co live with us?" Amanda met Brake's eyes. He looked back at her with that steady, open, undefended expression. Not asking, not pushing, just present, just there, just exactly that. "Let's have breakfast first," Amanda said. "But maybe," Maya pressed. Amanda looked at the man on her couch with her daughter leaning against his arm, and the December light coming through the windows and the $5 bill still raised triumphantly in Maya's hand. "Maybe," she said, and she meant it. And Maya, who had kept every list and written next time and drawn 12 stars next to a name and prayed for two sad people to be happy. Maya, who had understood more than anyone had known, smiled her gap-toothed, bare-eared, entirely certain smile. "I knew it," she said. She had. "If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, I want you to do 3 things before you leave. First, hit that like button. It helps more people find stories like this one. Second, subscribe to the channel so you never miss when I drop a new one, because I have so many more coming and you do not want to be left out. And third, drop a comment down below and tell me, which moment got you the most? Was it Maya and her lists? Was it the night Amanda cried through the wall? Or was it that final morning when Maya looked at both of them and said, "I knew it"? Whatever it was, I want to hear from you. I read every single comment and I love hearing how these stories land with you all. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. It means everything. I'll see you in the next one.